So again, welcome. My name is Julian Rowand. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Director of Grants for Change program here at Maine Initiatives. I am currently in what's now called Freedom, unceded Wabanaki territory, Freedom, Maine. And I am, let's see, today I'm wearing a gray shirt. I've got some gray in my beard, more and more every day. Got long hair pulled back, and beard, and in this room with this cool design at this cool co-working space in Belfast, actually, today. I am with my colleague, Bree Chamberlain. Bree, maybe give a wave so people see you there. Bree is somewhat new to Maine Initiatives, program associate that will be working with the Grants for Change program. So if this is a process that you continue with, you'll be interacting with Bree. And yeah, and also today during this session, if you have any questions that come up or you need some assistance, feel free to chat Bree directly, and Bree will be able to help you with that. I am going to share my screen, and while I'm doing that, for those who are here already, if you would be willing, just so we can get a sense of who's here, and you can get also a sense of who else is here today, if you would be willing to share your name, pronouns, where you're located today, where you're zooming in from today, and if you're affiliated with an organization and you feel comfortable sharing that as well in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to share my screen. Everybody, yeah, just want to make sure everybody can see that. Okay. And great. Let's get started here. And like I said, if there are questions, please shoot a chat to Bree. So yeah, like I said, this is the Grants for Change program. This is the information session for potential applicant organizations. So hopefully that's what you're here for. This will be really informational. We definitely welcome you to reach out with questions about the process as we go. Yeah, and just wanted to start just with a little centering practice, and I want to acknowledge we have busy days. You're taking time out of your busy day. Raining outside, maybe where you're at, a lot of things going on, but just want to invite you to be present with one another here for the next 52 minutes. And I will really try to stay within the hour that we allotted. And this is sort of wanted to share this with you. These were some intentions that I put down, and then I thought about turning this more into like a slide, but then I was like, it's kind of like a poem, and so I'm just going to leave it as is. Yeah, and maybe while you're finding your center, I would read this. So I'll invite you with me, if you're willing, just to take a moment, take a breath. To be here, to be with one another, to be with yourself, to be open to receiving information, to be curious. And so, yeah, would invite you to take a couple of deep breaths. Feel free to turn off your camera if you want. And wanted just to share this intention for this time together. And this for me is around care and curiosity. So care together here for this moment, in the day, this hour that we've allotted for gathering. It's always special when we get together, even if it's on Zoom. There is community here. And you all are connected to amazing work. You're doing amazing work. So yeah, from me to you, or from us to you, some of the care that we want to extend is to provide information about the program and applying, to be clear, to be as concise as possible, to honor those who have contributed to this program. Our work is very collaborative. Many of you in the room just want to acknowledge that you have contributed to this program and to the work that we do. And so want to try to honor that. And we have tried to honor that in things that we've changed this year. And to be attentive for us. We want to be attentive to your questions and concerns. Our ask of you is just to care for yourself. So please take care of yourself. Feel free to step away. Make sure you've got water. And for others too. This is a shared space, and we'll be sharing information. People will have questions. So at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. And I just ask maybe to be mindful of your question. If it's something that's very particular to you, reach out to us and we'll let you know how to do that. If it's something that might be helpful for everyone, please bring it into the space. And also know we've got 10, 11 people here today, and to try to hold a little bit of space so that everybody can potentially ask a question if they need to. Yeah, and we are holding curiosity, want to know more about you and your amazing work. And like I mentioned, try to hold questions to the end. If there's something that comes up, just a point of clarification, feel free to put that in the chat, and Bree might be able to respond. So yeah, maybe just end with a breath and see how that lands for you here in our time. And yeah, we'll get started here. So our agenda for the day, the photo here, just a lot of these photos you'll see, most of them are from our Grants for Change grant making retreat last fall. So not everybody who attended is in this picture here. I think some people were running around, but this is some of the folks that were there, and you may recognize people in this photo. You'll learn more about our participatory process, and so we just want to honor these amazing people who were the decision-making body last year. So a lot of these photos will come from that retreat. We believe in transparency. Want you to also to see how this works, because it's different. It's different than traditional philanthropy in a lot of ways. So our agenda today, are welcome. Just did that. We'll talk about who we are, main initiatives, but also Grants for Change. We'll talk about our vision for this work, grant making program, our framework that we use. Again, this is learning and evolution that we've done really since 2016. And I'll give you a little bit more background, but we're learning all the time. And so this is a collective vision and framework. Talk about what we do and how we do it, and including this grant making process. And like I said, time for questions at the end. I wanted to include just briefly a glossary of terms. Sometimes this work can get very jargony. And so I want to just put out some terms that you'll encounter and concepts in our presentation here today, and just want to note some things. There's some of these hold some tension that we won't be able to resolve in this space, but just we're holding it. And some will be also defined through this. So we will talk about participatory grant making. We use the term BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, to refer to, and this is again another term you may have heard, people of the global majority, people who are not white identifying. This term though is loaded. We don't have our term, our terms don't actually capture who we are. So we acknowledge that. We're using this. This is something that is used in our field, but we're also, we live in tension with this term, okay? So just want to note that. We'll be talking about white supremacy, settled colonialism, racialized capitalism. We realize also these are charged for people in this room. So want to hold that tenderly, but we just feel like it's important to name. Our work centers around racial justice. Want to make a note too that we include in that idea of racial justice, again, this is a term that is used to talk about a broad array of work, which we include certainly tribal sovereignty efforts in that, but we just have to note, right, that the notion of race too has been weaponized with regard to tribal sovereignty efforts. And there, folks in this room probably could speak much more eloquently about that than me, but I just wanted to note that too, because that also is a tension. But we're going to use the term racial justice. We'll talk a little bit about intersectionality. We could spend a whole hour on that, but just wanted to note that that's a term. We will talk a little bit about that, and just want to lift up the word community too, because community means a lot of things to a lot of people, and that's yeah. But just wanted to note that as that comes up, it means a lot of different things. All right, who we are. Maine Initiatives. This is our official mission statement. So I say official because we also have sort of an unofficial working statement. And if you are, Bree just put in the chat there, if you're familiar with Maine Initiatives, maybe give us a thumbs up emoji or even a thumbs up in the screen, whatever is easiest, just so we can have a sense, yeah, yeah, how you, yeah, if you're, yeah, okay, I see some hearts. Appreciate that. Thumbs up, Keita, definitely. Cool. So great. So our mission statement here, Maine Initiatives, a fund for change, cultivates social, economic, and environmental justice through grants and other support to grassroots organizations in Maine. So that's our official mission statement. These are the programs under the umbrella of Maine Initiatives. We've grown a lot in the last few years. So if you knew Maine Initiatives a couple years ago, this may be new for you. So Grants for Change Fund, which we'll talk about today. We also have an immigrant-led organization fund, which is important to note too, that we have a fund dedicated specifically for immigrant-led organizations, and we can touch on that today. In January, we'll be launching a new program for us. We're really excited about it. It's called the Giving Project. Happy to also talk more about that if you're interested in that. It's a donor organizing model. We're part of a national network of like 9 or 10 progressive foundations. So we're very excited about that 6-month, really sort of immersive process for like 20 people to fund community organizing in Maine. Maine Share program is a workplace giving program that you might be familiar with. And then finally, the Outdoor Equity Fund, which we just launched this spring. Keita was involved with that program as an advisor, so grateful for that, Keita. The Outdoor Equity Fund funds outdoor equity work, BIPOC-led efforts. Yeah, we just had our first rounds of grants this spring, which we're very excited about. So Maine Initiatives, what we do. So that's kind of who we are as Maine Initiatives, what we do. We've made a long-term commitment to racial justice work. So beginning in 2015, Maine Initiative shifted its focus. We were founded back in the 80s by an amazing group of people, but we definitely had a moment, 2015, where we did a listening tour of the state, and what we heard is there needs to be a focus on racial justice. And that also just felt important to the people that were involved at that time. And yeah, so we prioritize racial justice across our programs. Grants for Change was the first program, our grant making, our participatory grant making program. So this program is really at the core of this work for us. And we see our work as at the intersection of community organizing, community philanthropy, and justice. And hopefully that'll be sort of clear how that works through this presentation. The how and the why. So how? So we use a radically participatory place-based, radically participatory place-based philanthropy to advance racial justice and equity in Maine communities, okay? Those who best understand the issues, participate in funding decisions through grant making, through community grant making committees, through advisory bodies. Again, this is another photo from last year's grant making retreat. And in our retreats, as we'll talk about, there are applicants at the retreat. So I invite all of you to sign up to be proposal readers and potentially to be on the grant making advisory committee. And there are other community leaders in that room too, that have different roles, but that are invested in racial justice work across the state. Yeah, which it's good to sort of make a note here on community philanthropy and how we understand that, how we do that at Maine Initiatives. We identify, mobilize, leverage resources. So we raise and pull resources that are needed for social change in order to fund and strengthen organizations. So we put those organizations or resources in the hands of the organizations that are on the front lines of organizing activism and social change in Maine, with the intent of building an ecosystem for change, okay? Individuals, organizations, donors, funders, networks, to bring people together around this work, okay? And we lift this up because this is a little bit different. This is sort of the organizing model, a little bit different, again, than traditional philanthropy. And speaking of traditional philanthropy, we need to acknowledge, and part of our commitment to how we do the work, okay, is also because of the history of philanthropy. It needs to be said, right? We recognize that this process of applying for funding can be harmful. And in particular, right, for our Indigenous brothers and sisters, thinking about land and land theft that's occurred in this place and across this country, right? Thinking about applying for grants connected to resources that are connected to extraction connected to the land, thinking about our Black identified brothers and sisters with history in this country, but in the diaspora as well, right? And we're talking about labor extraction as well. So philanthropy is tied up with that. Wealth is tied up with that. This legacy persists today, systems, institutions, including philanthropy and some of the institutions that some of you as advocates or organizers are trying to engage with, right? So we feel like it's important. It is important to acknowledge that our efforts in creating, administering this program within this system is imperfect and will be. And we're constantly learning, trying to evolve. So also your feedback too is crucial in that. So just, want to acknowledge that and acknowledge applying for grants, all kinds of power dynamics involved with that. Some of you may be feeling that too, just being in this room. So want to acknowledge all of those and honor all of those feelings in this place. I want to shift now to talk about the Grants for Change program specifically. Again, if you are familiar with the Grants for Change program, maybe just like a thumbs up or an emoji. If this is new to you, it'd be helpful to us. know how sort of quickly to go through. I know I'm kind of went quickly through the main initiatives point. It seemed like a number of you were familiar with us, but now we're getting to sort of the core of what we're talking about today. All right. Grants for Change. So this is a participatory grant making program. Again, it's been around since, well, first round of that was in 2016. The goal is to fund and strengthen, again, Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC, community-based nonprofit organizations in Maine, unceded Wabanaki territory, through funding and relationship building opportunities. Okay, and hopefully that'll be clear as we go, sort of how that works. So understand a little bit about community philanthropy and how we approach it, but you'll sort of see the nuts and bolts here as we talk. Since 2016, the Grants for Change program has granted about $2.3 million, okay, of unrestricted general operating support. Most of those years, that's been multi-year support too. And again, these are all things that feel really important to us. It's not necessarily standard practice across philanthropy. We're trying to change that here in Maine. We also advocate for some of these, what we feel like is best practices around unrestricted general operating support, multi-year grants, and sizable too. Grants, and we're constantly trying to increase the sizes of our grants. So $2.3 million since 2016 to approximately 56 organizations here in Maine. Overview of the program for this year. Well, we've started this last year, this current commitment, which is a 3-year commitment. So for 2022, 23, and 24, we've committed to funding a cohort of 12 organizations each year. So 36 organizations over 3 years with, again, unrestricted multi-year. So these are 3-year grants of general operating support, $15,000 a year, $45,000 total. And we also don't have any reporting requirements here at Maine Initiative. So I will not be asking for a report on your work. We see it, I see it, I'll just speak for myself, as my responsibility is to really understand the work that you're doing and to show up for the work that you're doing. And to build relationships so that I get a sense of your work and can lift your work up really, rather than having you try to report to me about what you're doing. You've got better things to do, is my opinion. Our priorities for 2023. So we are prioritizing Black and Wabanaki-led groups. All BIPOC-led groups are welcome to apply and will be considered in our funding. Last year, we had 2 groups that also, out of the 12, identified as immigrant-led as well, that we funded through the program, to give you a sense of maybe what that breakdown is. And we'll explain a little bit more of that, why those 2 groups are prioritized here in Maine. We also are prioritizing community building. And this, again, is something that we have learned in community and with community of racial justice efforts in Maine really stems from building community. And so we understand community. We've created these 2 sort of general categories for community building organizations. And this is us looking at all of these 56 organizations that we funded over the years, and then also specifically the organizations and the work that the organizations last year did as sort of a benchmark. And so we're holding these 2 categories of hub and emerging organizations, and we will talk more about that. Finally, well, we have this grantee cohort approach, which really is about capacity building, relationship opportunities, organizing opportunities within the cohort, and really led by the cohort in a lot of ways, and also feedback on the program. And then finally, our grant making retreat, and we'll talk about the process here. Community-led and informed design in different ways. There's a request for proposals, the proposal readers, grant making advisory committee, the retreat, and then the announcement in December. But again, we'll touch on that as we go. Wanted to lift up the work of the 2022 Grants for Change cohort, the organizations, and some of you may be acquainted with these organizations. Some of you may be involved and connected. Actually, I know a number of you are in many really beautiful ways. So this is the list of the cohort from last year, and the group selected this year will get opportunities to build with this group, this amazing group of organizations. All right. Vision. I have to take a breath because I know it's a lot of information, and I'm also trying to share it all and also give ample time for Q&A at the end. So a lot of information there. That's sort of went through who we are as Maine Initiatives and Grants for Change, an overview of the program, and want to share a little bit about our vision, our framework. Okay, and this may also help in terms of you understanding the RFP and also our application. And again, with this too, we want this to be in conversation and in dialogue. I mean, this vision and framework does come from community conversations. Okay, so our vision for this. And we will share these slides with you as well. So you'll have these, don't feel like you need to take all the notes and all the things. We'll be sharing these with you. So our vision for Grants for Change. We seek to name and respond to the particular intergenerational effects of anti-Black racism experienced by descendants of enslaved people in the continental US and the Caribbean. We also seek to name and respond to the specific histories and contemporary realities of settler colonialism experienced by generations of Wabanaki in this land now called Maine. Okay, these are sort of the core of our priorities. These come from particular histories here in Maine. We feel a responsibility to prioritize these, to name and respond, as I've said. And also in terms of philanthropy here, just a little stat, less than 8% of philanthropic dollars are invested in communities of color, and far less is committed to Black-led organizations across the country. Okay, so also through this priority, we're trying to address that as well in the sector. Some of the analysis behind that, okay. Root causes of racial inequity today in this country are anti-Black racism and settler colonialism. And again, these are, some of these you may have tensions with, but we feel like it's important to state clearly sort of our analysis and where our vision is coming from. And again, we invite conversation around this. So also legacies of settler colonialism, genocide, chattel slavery are foundational injustices in this country, and continue to inhibit the ways in which we're able to achieve social, economic, environmental justice. So important to be attentive to that, right? These are pervasive and persistent realities for those communities. Welcome, Nicole. So glad you could join. Yeah, and in our, like I mentioned, in our sector, Black and Wabanaki communities have been and continue to be systematically undervalued and underfunded in Maine. So that's where our vision, priorities, and our framework and our commitments come from. Yeah, we just give you a minute with these. We seek to dismantle racial injustice, institutional, structural, and systemic forms. Further racial justice movement through community building, grassroots organizing, active advocacy, or policy change. We want to support organizations that are strengthening communities through traditional and/or indigenous wisdoms, liberatory cultural practices, some examples of which are healing work, earth protection work, the arts, organizations that may not be Black and Wabanaki, but that are organizing with or serve those communities and through their work or in close solidarity with those communities. And finally, just want to note too about that, because it comes up in questions. In prioritizing Black and Wabanaki-led groups, and again, to note that the difference there, right? In Black, we're talking about racial category. Wabanaki, we're not talking about strictly a racial category. Obviously, we're talking about sovereign affiliation, tribal entity. So distinct, but this is how we're sort of holding both of these in this priority, and all of the complexity there. Just need to note that we do have an immigrant-led organization fund specifically for immigrant communities, okay? And some of those organizations that we're able to support through that fund also identify as Black, okay? So just holding that. We're not trying to be divisive in our different funds or in our priorities, but we feel like each of our communities have particular needs, right? And so for Grants for Change, we're trying to address particular needs, specific needs through this program. And to challenge other funders too, right? To raise funds to address particular needs in community. Funding priorities. So spoke a little bit about them in the last slide. Just examples here of some of the organizing. And many of you are doing this work, but just want to feel like it's helpful sometimes to have examples of what this looks like. And we, again, glean these from the organizations that we've funded in the past, the work that's happening right now through the cohort or with the organizations that were funded last year. So lifting up some of these abolitionist efforts, right? Foreground harm reduction, collective healing, transformative or restorative justice practices, and a number of you are leaders in that in this work in Maine who are with us today. Advocacy as well, right, around essential services, education, health equity, affordable housing, transportation, food security. We feel like it's important to hold also, right, the state or the federal government accountable to provide services. So we want to support those that are trying to make that change. Also, obviously, tribal sovereignty efforts, land back movements here in Maine that are incredibly strong, and also really need our collective support together. And it's our responsibility. And finally, another example around Black joy and Black liberation. Really sort of, for me personally, the core of like how I move in the world and in terms of my history and my people where I come from. And I could talk more about that, but don't want to take up too much of this space doing that, but that is also central to our funding priorities. I'm going to quickly go through our funding framework. Want to get to the RFP, the application. Let me just a quick temperature check of like, how is this landing for folks in the room? Are you resonating with sort of how we're sharing our work, our vision? We feel like it's important to be clear about how we move. Yeah, okay, cool. I know it's a lot. It's uncomfortable to talk a lot, and but I also am like committed to sharing with y'all information that could be helpful. So, and I also hope we get more time to talk as a group and build community too. But for this moment, want to just give you the information maybe that you need for this process. So a bit about our funding framework. We'll get into what the RFP and the process. And then I'm committed to opening up for questions at 12:45. So that's my plan. Funding framework. So I want to talk a little bit about hub organizations, emerging organizations. So I won't read all of these, but the way we understand hub organizations that maybe are a little bit more established. And again, in BIPOC communities, that may be an organization that's been around just for a few years, right? But they are really rocking it in terms of what they're doing, right? They're really out there building communities, they're developing programming, and we want to support those organizations because they're also creating opportunities for other organizations and individuals. So we feel like it's important to lift their work up and to continue to support them. Because sometimes what happens is an organization will be around for a few years, people know them, and then people think, or funders think, oh, they're good. They don't need any more help. And that's wrong. That's wrong. So we're committed to continue to fund those hub organizations. But we've also played a role in funding new organizations that are just getting started. Some examples of that, some of you may know Adila Muhammad, the third place, Adila will say, like, Maine Initiatives Grants for Change gave the third place their first grant to get them going, and now they're doing amazing work. Again, for us, it was just that commitment to supporting organizations just as they're forming, and not all funders will do that. So we're committed to funding emerging organizations. We're also committed to supporting groups that are working in an intersectional sort of way. We don't have the time to sort of flesh that out fully, although I'll share a little bit of what that means, right? But realizing that forms of oppression are interlocking, okay? And that want to support those organizations that are attentive to that, okay? Which also means lifting up those who are marginalized within BIPOC community as well in the work. And we also want to fund work across the state as well. A lot of the funding that tends to happen is in Southern Maine, Cumberland County. So we're committed to also funding work that's happening across the state. Just a note on intersectionality here, and this is from the Combahee River Collective, you may be familiar with, and we hold this to be true, that the most general statement of our politics at the present time, and this is for Black feminists in the 70s, queer Black feminists in the 70s, but rings true today and is really central to movement work. So would be that we are actively committed to struggling against racial, sexual, heterosexual, and class oppression, and see as our particular task the development of integrated analysis and practice based upon the fact that the major systems of oppression are interlocking. The synthesis of these oppressions creates the conditions of our lives. So we hold that to be true. What we do. So here we get into the RFP. Try to do this in 2 minutes, but may go a little bit over. So through Grants for Change, we want to fund organizations, committed to funding organizations, working exclusively or primarily in Maine communities, okay? You could be doing work outside of the state, but we're interested in funding Maine-based work. Implementing programs that advance racial justice should be obvious. Primarily serves BIPOC communities, led by BIPOC members. And this is a shift for this year. We've increased our organizational operating budget limit to 1.5 million to support some of those hub organizations that now have a budget over $1 million that are growing. We want to continue to support them. So 1.5 million. Criteria here to apply. So this is, I think, one place to sort of keep in mind around being BIPOC led. This is how we're defining it. really going to have you self-define. This is not something that we're going to define for an organization, but be in conversation around and happy to talk more about this. So we're asking for 50% or more. So over the last 2 years, to meet 2 of 3 of these conditions. So 50% or more of BIPOC staff leaders in the organization. So we're talking about directors, people in terms of the operations who are leading, 50% or more of governing body members or decision-making roles, or it can be sort of your council too that are guiding the work in terms of governance, or 50% more of on-the-ground community interfacing organizers or staff and or volunteers. Okay, some organizations are just all staff right now. If you don't meet all 3 because of some strategic reasons, i.e. you don't want all BIPOC people just doing all the work in your organization and there's relationships there, let's talk about that around this. How we do it. So the process, community-led and informed design. So there was a community advisory board that helped shape this RFP. Applications here are due for the applications August 31st, and we just put that in the chat to sort of underline that. So midnight, that August 31st at the end of the day. We encourage you to sign up to be proposal readers as well, to read about the work that other organizations are doing, and to potentially participate in the grant making advisory committee. Okay, so everybody who wants to serve on the grant making advisory committee will also have to serve as proposal readers. So as a proposal reader, you'll get 3 proposals to read, to reflect on, to evaluate. And again, the evaluation, and next week we'll be doing an orientation for the proposal readers. So I invite you to come to that if you want to know more about it. Yeah, I won't get too far into that now. But one thing to notice, the first week of December, we'll be announcing the awards. So we'll have a grant making retreat in November. We should be announcing first week in December. Just a quick overview of the application, and then we'll get into questions here. So some things to note about the application, and you may have already taken a look at it. Again, we'll share these slides, and this is a link here at the bottom to it, but you can find it on our website at the Grants for Change part of the Maine Initiatives website. You're welcome to fill out the application either as a fillable PDF or as a Google form on the Google form. And both options you can get to by reading the RFP, but definitely read the RFP first. A lot of what's in the RFP we just went over. 9 pages total in terms of the fillable PDF. There's sections A through D. E is optional. 21 short answer questions, 4 longer narrative questions. Sections are general information, legal, fiscal, organization information, section about organizational leadership, and then the section on the narrative proposal is really where you're probably focus most of your time. RFP, again, definitely read through the RFP. A lot of what we talked about today is in the RFP. And yeah, finally, the narrative proposal. Again, the section that you'll spend the most time with. Each of these 4 parts of it has a suggested word amount, only a suggestion. Take as much space as you need or as little space as you need, but there's space to talk about organization, your work, ways in which you advance racial justice, and there's specific questions around that, sort of 4 questions connected to our funding priorities, and then to talk about your success, share an example of success in your work. And finally, connected to the RFP, we've also shared what the proposal reader evaluation looks like, right? So you get a sense, again, with the intention of transparency, you get a sense of what proposal readers will be using to review and then to like think about your work. And so we've attached that at the end of the RFP, and definitely recommend taking a look at that as well before you start the application. And finally, just to go over the process, how to apply. We've already talked a little bit about this, but application deadline, August 31st. Make sure to read through the whole application. The fillable PDF has the full application. Even if you're going to fill out the Google form, take a look at the fillable PDF because it has the full application. We're going to do another information session in 2 weeks. Welcome to come back or to share with colleagues too, if you think that that may be useful to them. And finally, complete and submit the application. Again, either using the online Google form or fillable PDF. Didn't quite leave 15 minutes, but yeah, questions. I mean, I guess, yeah, I would say maybe like 1 to 5, just to get a sense too, and think about your question now, but from 1 to 5, with like how clear do you feel about, about the program and what to do to apply? So 1 being, I have no idea. Julian just talked for 50 minutes and it all just kind of like washed through me, not sure. Or 5 being, I got this. I got it. I'm good. No, I see a 5 from Sarah. Joshua, 5, cool. Thanks. I see a 4. Okay. That's pretty good. Libya, 4. Have some particular questions. Cool. Nicole, 4. All right. That's good. All right, let's open it up for some questions. We've got 8 minutes. Also, if we need to go over, certainly open to that if folks need to stick around. But if you have to leave at 1, maybe, and you have a question, want to defer to you. So feel free to come off of mute. Yeah, would welcome your questions. Or any questions? Thanks.
My company just newly formed. We started last year. I have a philanthropist right now that's on my board that's helped me get through the seed fund, and it's 100% black led. I'm the only employee. What I do is I go into the organization. Well, I go into the community for the vulnerable population, which is mixed with all people. Not so many as I'd like to see. I really got into this work because I went into the State House and I was concerned about the people that are making laws against us. And I'd only see 1 or 2 black people up there. And I've only been familiar with this work for 4 or 5 years now. So learning advocacy and everything. With that being said, my whole board's white, but I picked them. I couldn't find anybody that could come in. So that's my only concern. And I am the founder of my company as well.
Yeah, great question, Marshall. And we recognize that this work has to be collaborative, right, and build solidarity across identities too to make it happen. And we're in Maine. I totally get that. Which is also why we have so for the eligibility for BIPOC led, the requirement is to meet 2 out of the 3 requirements. Okay. So if your board of directors doesn't meet that requirement, you would just need to meet the other 2, right? So if in terms of operations, leadership, right? It seems like that might be you. If operations and leadership and people in your organization, again, either volunteer or staff, if they are majority BIPOC, then you're cool. then you're cool. Then you don't have to worry about the board. So two out of the three. Thanks for the question. Libby, yeah.
Yeah, I think mine's a similar question. But so my board is majority BIPOC and majority immigrant. But so I guess I struggle with like the differentiation between those two because there's just so much that Black immigrant people are experiencing in Maine that is, so much like what, people who have lived in the shadow of slavery are experiencing in Maine. And I don't think for a lot of people who run systems, they really get the differentiation between that. But all of these systems of oppression are really put on our new immigrants in Maine. So anyway, I don't know. I just struggle with like the difference. Like, should I wait and apply for the immigrant-led one, or I'm feeling funky about that differentiation.
I so appreciate that tension and question, Libby. Thanks for raising that. We definitely welcome, so all organizations or groups that are identified as BIPOC-led and also serving BIPOC communities, and immigrant groups fit into that, right? And we have two groups, Community Organizing Alliance and Generational NOR last year, that are part of the Grants for Change cohort, right? They're building in community. So yeah, welcome that conversation too. I mean, part of the amazing thing that happens too at the grant making retreat, it's 3 days, it's really in depth. They'll have conversations about that, what you were just lifting up, both the solidarity that's happening, the particularity of the work in communities. So yeah, welcome you to apply.
Thanks for letting me think out loud about that.
Of course, if not somebody in this room, it's a question that comes up a lot in this, or somebody watching this video might have the same question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi Julian, thank you for hosting this. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking at the Google form for the application right now. Do you know if it saves as you go? I'm wondering if I should start with a PDF and then.
Great question, Sarah. And Bree, we've got a note to ourselves for 2 weeks when we do this again to mention that yes, if you sign in with from a Google account, then it will save, and you go back to that same link. It will save everything that you've done. The reason why we gave 2 options is because of that. So not everybody has a Google-based account, right? And I think it doesn't let you save, if I'm right, if you don't. But if you sign in with a Google-based account and you go back to that same link, signed in from that account, it should save all the work that you've done. Great question.
Thank you. And I was also exploring the a reader application, and I don't know if I have the window open still, but it looked like it was closed to people not inside the organization. The Google form might have been.
Okay, we're trying to fix that, but I will tell you that was like if you're interested, but either this afternoon or tomorrow we'll be launching the reader application. So we haven't officially launched that yet.
Okay.
You should, if you're on the Maine Initiatives email list, you should be getting information about that either this afternoon or tomorrow. And again, welcome everybody to sign up to be a proposal reader. And then we'll have that information session next Tuesday at the same time. $12:59. Any other questions that we can answer now? I'm just going to take a peek in the chat to see. Yeah, categories do the historical. Thank you, Kata, for just in terms of holding that difference and historical context of racial inequity, sovereignty, colonialism. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, learned a lot, obviously, from you too, just in our conversations around this. Great, and thanks. I saw send an email. Okay, yeah. If you have any questions that come up, either from this or as you're filling out the application, or you want to talk more about eligibility, send us an email. So that's grants4change@maininitiatives.org. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Try to stay dry, and very just grateful for the amazing work that all of you are connected with, and hope we can support that work and build together. So thank you. Thanks for your time and attention and your questions today. Hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Nicole. Oh, all right. Let's see.